This is Proxy Countdown. Welcome to the big show for the week of October 28th, 2024, Halloween week, alongside my tag team partner, Matt Moscardi. I'm Damion Rallis, and today's countdown: compensation committee shenanigans at Corpay. Ross Stores unloads the money truck for a guy who sells boots. Bipolar voters at Neogen. One less schmuck at Consumers Bancorp. And on the big vote, a Halloween special data dive, zombies, the almost dead, all kinds of crazy stuff going on. Let's go over to our trade wire. Let's hit our top stories. Kenneth Fisher has joined the board at oil company APA Corporation. Ken is a certified public accountant, the CFO at Champion X, the former CFO at Noble Energy. One of his new roles at APA will be joining the board's cybersecurity committee. As if to say, Matt, that does any of this really matter in the first place?
So just to be clear, though, this is not the same Ken Fisher of Fisher Investments.
This is an accountant.
Okay, just making sure, because that would have been arguably even worse.
The most powerful woman on the board of Entergy Corporation, former Arkansas Senator Blanche Lincoln, has stepped down. She was Entergy's longest tenured director, and she stepped down with 11% of board influence. Blanche's sister, Mary Lambert, directed Madonna's Like a Virgin video in 1984.
Just director fun facts.
But more appropriately for Halloween, she also directed Pet Sematary, Stephen King's Pet Sematary in 1989.
Did she really? Wow.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, good movie.
What's going on at Entergy? Okay, here's a good one. I had to do a lot of digging for this one. Bear with me. The compensation committee at Corpay has modified its CEO's 2021 option award. CEO Ronald Clark originally received the $56 million option award in 2021 from a compensation committee chaired by Thomas Haggerty. Okay, so for roughly 2/3 of the awards to vest, Corpay's share price needed to be at least $350 for 10 consecutive trading days. The remaining third would vest if the share price hit $400. On Monday, October 28th of this week, as Corpay's share price coincidentally hit $351, the compensation committee announced that 2/3 of the award would vest if Corpay's stock price hit $350 for at least 3 trading days by December 31st. So that's it. Not 10 days, not even 3 consecutive days, just 3 days. And for this, to achieve this part of the award, which is worth about, $40 million, they also canceled the remaining part of the award that was now impossible, hitting that share price of $400. And they went on to say that the CEO agreed to forego any new equity grants in 2025, which sounds heroic until checking the proxy statement and when you realize that his equity award was only about $1 million in 2023 and $0 in 2022. So, what a magical Halloween gift for the CEO.
Well, it's a magical Halloween gift for investors, too, because since then, the stock is down over just under 3%.
Good, so they're not falling for this trick.
They basically hit the number, changed it, and then the stock fell immediately.
Okay, so here, according to the filing, I'm going to read the quote because this is what got me to look. This typo got me to look a little bit deeper. According to the filing, the modified performance option award was approved by the compensation committee of Corpay, which is composed entirely of independent directors. So that is verbatim from the filing.
That's not your stuttering.
No.
That is what it says.
So that's that. I looked into the stutter and I realized that the reason why they probably got flustered was because they knew that the compensation committee was not ethically independent at all. Compensation committee member Thomas Haggerty has served with CEO Ronald Clark on the board of directors of another company, Dayforce, since 2018, where they both served together on Dayforce's compensation committee. In fact, a third member of Corpay's board has served with them at Dayforce since 2018, Gerald Throop. So there's no independence here at all. I mean, clearly, Thomas Haggerty changed the CEO's option award to make it easier for his buddy, who he serves with on 2 boards now, to make it easier for him to attain. So that's what's going on at Corpay.
That is a
how it works.
Halloween. That is candy in a bucket. That is what that is.
OpenTable CEO Debbie Sue joins the Kraft Heinz board. Positive move considering only 17% of current Kraft Heinz influence is female. A leadership transition is underway at Ross Stores, where former Boot Barn CEO James Conroy will replace Barbara Rentler as CEO. Who's not leaving is former CEO and current executive chair Michael Balmuth, the man who actually has the most influence on the board of Ross Stores. Barbara also will continue to be paid for quite a long time. She will continue as an employee of the company and will serve as a senior advisor until March 2027.
Wow. That is a long transition.
Yeah,
she's like the Bob Iger of cheap clothes.
Which makes sense considering the Golden Hello Award for the new CEO. He is going to get an initial stock grant given to him on his start date worth $8 million, right? A sign-on cash bonus of $7.6 million. Another initial stock award, this one worth $32 million. A relocation bonus of about $1 million. Temporary housing and travel and relocation benefits. All that.
This is Ross Stores, right? Like that kind of like cheapy store from the 80s.
That's almost about $50 million before the guy even starts.
That's a lot. Now, Brian Nickel didn't get that much, and he's the CEO of Starbucks.
And lastly, at Morgan Stanley, CEO Ted Pick will officially become board chair on January 1st. At that time, former CEO and executive chair James Gorman will be named chairman emeritus, of course.
Oh, emeritus. I love an emeritus.
Which means he won't be leaving the boardroom. And he will become a non-employee advisor to the company for an annual fee of $400,000, continuation of current health benefits, access to a car and driver, office and administrative support, and rights with respect to the indemnification and advancement of expenses of directors and officers of the company, meaning that basically, despite the fact that he's neither a director or an officer, he can't get sued for anything.
Yeah, he gets the D&O insurance. That actually is the yellow flag. It doesn't it immediately make you think, what did he do that he needs? Like, that got negotiated in. Like, I could get sued here for something that I did, so please indemnify me.
Which is fine if you are a D&O, if you're a director and officer, but he's clearly not. Let's move over to our proxy cage matches. Not a lot going on this week. Activist investor Legion Partners has increased its stake in Five9 and is pushing for a board seat. The Five9 board is controlled currently by CEO Mike Birkland with 35% influence and lead independent director David Welsh with 15%, who's been involved with the board for almost 20 years. So that's a great lead independent director. Corvex Management has taken a stake in Fortria Holdings. Activist investor Starboard Value also took a stake in the company last year. Fortria's board notably consists of only one female director, Michelle Sanders, who has only 2% of total board influence. You don't see that very often. That's pretty sad. And finally,
before you move on, I do want to mention we are interviewing Sang-Hyun Lee of Flashlight Capital, who is an activist investor who's making a play for KT&G Corporation. This is a Korean. It's the Korean Ginseng Corporation. They do tobacco and ginseng. We're gonna get to actually talk to an activist about activism for our Trade Wire. That's coming up. We're gonna interview him in the coming weeks.
Moving over to our vote results table, nothing really much going on here in October. The winners of the week are Robert Lisicki and our new Palouse Van Amstel at Zura Bio Limited, 97% support. That's a lot. 51% of the vote rejected Seonpay at Neogen Corporation. Frankly, it's hard to see what changed in the company's pay plans over the last year when shareholders overwhelmingly approved pay with 97% support. Matt, I looked at every proxy I could find. I looked at every detail of the pay plan. Essentially nothing has changed. Absolutely nothing. So I don't really know what's going on there.
Maybe it's a retroactive vote. Maybe last year they were like, we're going to give you a pass because we don't have time to read your proxy this year. So we'll come back to it next year and tell you that it's terrible.
I need to talk about Consumers Bancorp for a second. Excuse me, but first of all, there are almost as many non-votes, about 850,000, as there were for votes, about 1.2 million. So I don't know. Maybe shareholders should do something.
I mean, again, I think Consumers Bancorp and Neogen Corporation, that was the year they were busy.
And second of all, Harry W. Schmuck Jr. retired as a member of the board. Okay. I'm sorry.
I was wondering where that joke was going to go.
But Schmuck is bad enough, okay?
You're right. It is pretty bad.
But Harry Schmuck.
Yeah.
I really don't know what's happening. And he's a junior. His dad was also called Harry Schmuck and wanted to keep that great legacy going. I don't understand why. I don't understand this one at all. Harry Schmuck.
Well, look, he had a board appointment for life because of his dad, so you can call him whatever you want. Like his name could be, anything. And for he's the one laughing to the bank.
For our Gentile listeners, please look up the Yiddish definition of schmuck to understand why I'm so irate here. I just don't get this. This is unheard of. I don't understand this one. This one's crazy to me. Someone from Consumers Bancorp call me and tell me why you'd call a man Harry Schmuck. It's terrible. And finally, there's really nothing much going on at the only two large cap meetings this week. Shareholders, are perfectly content across the board at Bio-Techne and Parker Hannifin. Did we cover Parker Hannifin on the show?
We covered Parker Hannifin.
So I don't think shareholders were listening.
Well, no, Parker Hannifin was interesting because they're like they were the board that everyone was within like 30 miles of each other, right? So
so why would they vote against each other?
There's no way they're going to vote against people who live that close together.
All right. So this week on the big vote, instead of covering in detail one company, Matt, you have put together a very special package, a very special Halloween package. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you're up to, but what do you got?
This is for our European listeners who deeply celebrate Halloween. Halloween is a time for, skeletons and the undead and all. Yeah. So what I did was
Candy and the undead. That's a very, very American tradition, right?
Is there
Candy
anything
and
more
the
American
undead
than that? I think we stole it from about 15 other cultures, though. So what I did was compile lists of directors, and I gave them some characteristics. They're bucketed by typical Halloween, scary movie monsters. So first and foremost, zombies. Mm-hmm. Everybody's heard of a zombie director if you're into corporate governance. Zombie directors are directors that get less than 50% for votes, but they stay on the board anyway. They call them zombie directors.
It is probably the single worst feature of corporate governance in the United States that it exists at all.
I mean, it's funny to see it when it happens, and in the 8K, when they're describing the results, they say so-and-so tendered their resignation to the board rejected their resignation, and has decided to keep them, right?
From a policy perspective, there are two reasons why this happens. One is that these directors get voted out at companies with plurality voting standards, which means that they only need one vote. And in uncontested elections, which is all of the elections essentially, you just need one vote to get reelected. So it doesn't matter if a majority of shareholders say no to you. The other instance, which you just referred to, are these majority voting standards where there is not a required automatic resignation. The board is actually allowed to reject the resignation of a director and reject the voice of the shareholder, which is absolutely ludicrous. But that's how you get to this zombie director situation.
The idea that the alternative democracy is effectively an advisory democracy and not an actual democracy is already a comedy.
Is it even, though? I don't know. Yeah.
So there are a bunch of zombie directors. I think there were 25 or 30 in our database.
Oh, still that many?
Globally today.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, when you talk about 90,000 directors, that's not a lot.
Percentage, of course.
But the amazing part about it was because of our influence numbers, we can actually tell you zombie influence on the board. So these are the top 5 companies. I'll give you the top 5 by influence of zombies. These are directors that investors have said we do not want here that have influence over the board. All right. Number 5, A.O. Smith. There's 2 zombies on the board.
Whoa.
Both women, Ilham Kadri and Vicky Holt. They have a total of 11% influence between the 2 of them. A.O. Smith is a weird company because they have 2 classes of shares, but those class share, and then there's 2 classes of directors based on those shares. But it seems like those directors sort of interchange. Like you'll be a class A director one year and then a common stock director the next year. So it's just a mix and match. And every single time you're a common stock director, you get negative votes. Not always a majority of negative votes, but investors are basically saying because of this share class, it's always a protest vote. So, but those are your first zombies because both of those women are the first in the last 7 years of that had a majority vote against. Both still on the board. They both just ignored it because they know on the board that next year they're going to be in the Class A. They'll get a majority of votes for, and it'll be fine. No big deal.
They also know that unless you're a fan of this show, that there's probably no other media enterprise that is paying attention to this vote and causing any kind of like outrage on any level.
There's no one on TikTok talking about how Vicky Holt got voted off the A.O. Smith board, but
CBS News is not concerned that a publicly traded corporation is allowing this to happen.
Okay, so here's number 4, Akiro Therapeutics. Now, this is another board with 2 zombie directors on it. In fact, almost all of these boards have 2 zombie directors on it. Seth Harrison and Juan Zhu, 21% of the influence. I looked through all of these companies. These aren't dual-class companies. So these are not like, they're not controlled. They usually have a large shareholder that is an insider or family member, but not a controlling shareholder, like 7 to 10% of the shares, which is a lot. But that actually makes it even more impressive that you're getting more than 50% against these directors. TG Therapeutics, they have 3 zombies on the board, with 22% of the influence.
Maybe that's what they sell. Maybe they sell some kind of anti-zombie cream or something.
I think it is. Yeah, Daniel Hume, Cigar Loniel, and Jan Echlard.
Okay.
Now we're getting into the big dogs. Claris Corporation, 2 directors. 42% of the influence on the board is zombies. Wow. Donald House and Nicholas Sokolow. Those are 2 zombies who are basically controlling the outcome of the company, despite the fact that
it's an exciting board meeting,
isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, do they just say, is every chart like a picture of a brain with a line going up?
I just imagine Donald House ripping his arm off and hitting the head of the audit committee chair.
And finally, Paramount Group, not to be confused with Paramount. CBS, Paramount,
the Redstone
not the media
operation.
company, the Redstone, the ex-Redstone, now Ellison enterprise. This Paramount Group is a real estate group. It's a family legacy company. Katharina Otto Bernstein of the Otto family, who owns 14% of the shares, still couldn't keep Katharina from getting more than 50% vote against. They rejected, in fact, they said, quote, they rejected her resignation since she's related to the founder and decided to engage with the shareholders about why they were voting against her.
That seems like a good reason to accept the resignation that she's related to the founders, right? That shareholders are that upset?
I mean, the reality is it's a real estate group that she does nothing related to real estate, except that she is related to the grandfather who started the company, that kind of thing. But she has, because she's a family member and a controlling shareholder, or a huge shareholder, she has 59% of the influence on the board, according to Free Flow Analytics data. 59% influence. No wonder why the board rejected her resignation. It'd be really hard to accept that resignation. So those are my zombies. Those are zombie-run boards or zombie-led boards. Okay, I love Claris Corporation. I love a good.
Well, I also see you didn't mention Boston Beer Company. I like the idea of drunk zombies.
That's right. I did not mention Boston Beer Company because they don't have very much influence. Only 9% of the influence is zombie.
But still, in the honor of Halloween, I got to ask you this: does a drunk zombie act like a normal person? Is it like the opposite of? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. It's
do
like
they
a
act
healing
sober?
property. Yeah. We'll do a study.
All right.
All right. Those are zombies. You ready for the next group?
Yeah, keep it coming.
Krakens.
I don't know what
Kraken
you're talking
is?
about. No, I actually don't. It's a monster. It's a
sea monster.
But I don't know what that means.
It's a giant squid. It's
Is it mythical? Is it real?
It's mythical. It's a massive squid.
Why?
Here's the definition of a kraken.
Is
Kraken
it how
director.
like ancient seafarers used to explain like a bad wave that
yeah,
like,
exactly. It's like it
capsized the boat?
was the
Okay,
kraken that took the boat down.
It was the kraken. Okay.
These are directors with the most second-degree connections in our database because they have a lot of tentacles and it's hard to escape them.
Okay. This will kind of have to be explained as it goes.
These are just highly connected individuals. They have tentacles everywhere.
Is a
fingers in
kraken a
every
Halloween
pie.
beast? Is it?
It's Halloween adjacent. It's my kids have been into pirates this Halloween.
Okay,
so,
these are essentially our directors who are larger than life in that they have just an incredible amount of connections. That's what you're saying?
Incredible amount. All right,
Okay.
so I'll give you an example, all right?
Go
So
ahead.
the caveat here is there are a lot of like Asian companies and power infrastructure companies that have multiple subsidiaries and
Yeah.
all the directors sit on the same subsidiary. So it looks like they have a lot of connections.
Difficult
but they
to
don't
analyze
really.
from a Western corporate governance perspective. Yeah.
So the way I looked at these is discrete connections, like the number of times that, Bob and Jane are on the same board isn't nearly as interesting as the number of people Bob is connected to discreetly, one at a time, right? Like, so I'm just going to do the top three here.
Sure.
Because
The biggest krakens, Halloween
the
krakens.
biggest krakens. Let's start with Jean-Martin Foles. He's a retired kraken. He's not currently on a board, but he's in our
Okay.
database.
Retired kraken.
361 total connections.
Wow.
71 discrete connections. 71 discrete connections to people who are actively on boards now. That means on average, because he's got 361 connections and 71 of them discrete, that means he is connected to, on average, 5 directors on every board he's ever sat on. He's sat on AXA, Carrefour, Saint Gobain, Alstom, SocGen, Solvay, Utelstat. I mean, he's basically a European kraken. This is
European kraken.
Europe's kraken. He's number 3 on my list.
Okay.
Number 2, Autopal Rukpaboon.
Okay.
Now, this is an example of one of those Asian companies. This is a Thai oil company.
Thai oil company.
The
yeah.
PTT companies. But he had the second most connections total in the database, 828 connections,
Wow.
81 of which were discrete.
Okay.
So he's got a lot of connections in Thailand, and that's pretty much it, though.
So if you want to get anything done in Thailand, and you're an American company, this is the guy you want on your board.
Call him. Call him. Yeah. Especially if you're looking for oil. And finally, the number 1 kraken in our database, Claudio X. Laporte. He's the chair of Kimberly-Clark de Mexico.
Wow. It's funny. Before you get going with Claudio, I also looked at a few things that I don't know that I'm going to cover this week, but I looked at what I called near dead directors. These were directors who were at least 90 years old, who had a controlling influence of the company, of the board, right? And Claudio actually got an honorable mention. He is 91 years old and currently still sits on 4 different boards.
Yeah.
Incredible. Hats
4
off
boards.
to Claudio. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Claudio has 532 connections. He has 91 discrete connections in
Perfect,
our database.
Matt. One for every year he's been alive. He's 91 years old.
He's literally made a best friend every single
That's
year.
good for Claudio, yeah.
Here are the companies that he has run through, right?
Okay.
He's been on the boards of these companies, and therefore
Are you
has
going to name the
connections
entire
to them.
database?
It might as well be General Electric, Kimberly-Clark, Unilever, Home Depot, Alpha, Grupo Carso, Grupo Financiero Inbursa, Grupo Mexico, Grupo Televiso, Kellanova, Kimberly-Clark de Mexico.
Whoa.
So he's on Kimberly-Clark and Kimberly-Clark de Mexico, Bolsa Mexicano. He's on a bunch of Mexican boards, but Don't let it fool you. Home Depot and Unilever and General Electric, he's on massive boards.
I was going to say, these aren't like little boards. I mean, these are some of the most important companies in the North America, at least.
It's a little sad that he's 91 years old because, like, if you want to get something done, you call Claudio. That guy knows it all. Like 91 discrete direct connections to board members. That's a lot of connections. Those are my Krakens.
Okay.
How you doing so far? He's hanging in?
Yeah, the zombies were great in honor of Halloween. Krakens, I never heard of this as a Halloween creature, but I'll go with you on that one.
Let's bring it back. Let's bring it back to typical Halloween creatures.
This is what I'm looking for. Yeah, what do you got for me?
Mummies.
Perfect. That's a perfect Halloween creature, a mummy.
So we talk a lot about zombies who are voted out but stay on the board, right?
Yeah, what's a mummy?
But we don't talk about mummies. These are directors that aren't insiders. They're not founders. They're not CEOs. They're not family members. They're not executives. They're not controlling shareholders. They're just regular old directors.
Okay.
But they have a tenure of more than 20 years and less than 10% influence
see,
on
these
their
are some of
boards.
my favorites. Yeah, I like these. They're just there collecting a paycheck, right?
They're literally wrapped up in the corner somewhere, and every once in a while they vote and they just go, and it's a yes.
Well, you got to feel like it's someone's like golf friend, it's someone's buddy from college. Someone has been given this great opportunity to just get equity and cash every year for nothing, right?
Well, if you listen to our last show, most of these directors are getting paid like an executive, right? Like on a per hour basis. So we broke down the hourly wages of a director. So that's exactly what it is. I only focused on the US.
Okay.
For this. And because I thought, oh man, there's so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
In the U.S., there are 543 of them. There are 543 mummies
in our database
on these boards.
Okay.
They're sitting in the corner, wrapped up in gauze, just saying yes to management.
Bloody gauze.
In fact, 114 of them are lead independent directors.
Wow. Interesting.
114 mummy lead independent directors. So just focusing on them, because I needed to narrow this down somehow. It was so ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Here are your top 5 mummies that are also or have been lead independent directors on these boards.
Okay.
Tony James. He's 73 years old. He's on the Costco board. 9.8% influence on the board. He's been on the board since Kevin Durant was born.
Was born?
Was born.
Oh, I thought you were going to say started playing.
No.
Born.
The same year he was born.
Damn.
It was when
Good for Tony.
Kevin Durant and Adele, actually.
Oh, well.
The same year both of them were born.
Whatever year that is.
Here's what our take. We actually covered the Costco board this past proxy season. Here's what we said about Tony. Mm-hmm. First of all, his name is Hamilton James. Not Tony James.
Well, he saw that he was a big fan of The Sopranos, and he's like, I got to act tough. I got to be.
Well, I wrote, Hamilton James being nicknamed Tony is like nicknaming King Charles Lil Chucky.
Yeah.
James is pure royalty. Choate, Harvard, investment banking, Blackstone president, trustee of everything in New York City, worth $3 billion.
Wow.
I know the board likes to keep the OG, but 38 years for a non-founder? Come on, vote against James.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
That was my recommendation.
It's ridiculous.
That was my recommendation.
Yeah. He's there because he's part of someone's golf foursome, right? It has to be. He's part of some friendship circle, and they need old Tony.
Well, I covered this number 4 on this list too, Stuart Subotnick, who's 82 years old. He's on the Carnival Corporation board, so he's a Mickey Arison favorite.
Okay.
Like that's Carnival, right? 7.6% influence. He's been on the board since Reagan's second term.
Oh my God! Really? Wow.
Here's what we said about Subotnick. Vote against Subotnick. BlackRock voted against the pay committee last year because they didn't like them. Vote out the director in charge of picking directors to put on the pay committee.
Wait, he's the head of the nomination committee?
He was the nomination committee head. He's been there for over 30 years.
Wow.
He's basically an insider. Just stop it. How about Lawrence Shore, 69 of Dick's Sporting Goods?
Okay.
He's been there. He's been on the board since Roger Moore was still James Bond.
Okay, now you're getting weird. That was well, that's a long time ago. That's like when
the
Reagan
last
was
Roger
president.
Moore movie. 80, I think it was 85.
Okay, yeah, that's Reagan. Yeah.
Walter Fidorowicz, 76-year-old on the Photronics board.
Wait, can I talk about Lawrence Shore for a second? He's only 69 and he's been on the board since Reagan, basically. How old was he when he joined that board?
Is that the best fist bump ever? Like, just join me on the board, bro.
Was he in his 20s? I mean, we don't see see directors usually join boards that young unless they're at
30. He was like 30.
Obnoxious tech companies.
Like yeah.
Huh. Yeah.
Wow. Well, the Dick's Sporting Goods was a tech company of the 80s.
Okay, fine.
Walter Fidowitz, 76, on the Photronics board. He's been there since Reagan's first term. 2.7% influence.
These are the guys I really like. I like these guys who are so low influence. Yeah, just completely pointless.
What is the point of this? And then finally, I wrap this up with George Orban, 77 years old. Ross Stores. You brought up Ross Stores.
Yes.
Because they just changed the CEO. George Orban's part of that change. This guy is 8.2% influence. He's been on the board since 1982.
Wow.
I was 3 years old. In 2024,
he's still there.
he's still there. 2024, he got 96% votes.
Of course, yeah.
In fact, if I ignore using you were the lead independent director at some point of the board, Ross Stores has 4 mummies on it. They have 4 directors over 20 years experience with less than 10% influence.
Well, maybe this is why they're giving $50 million to a new CEO who's going from like a $3 billion market cap to a $50 billion market cap company and does not need any incentive to get a major promotion like that. Does not need an extra $50 million.
I mean, that's why it matters if you have a mummy on your board, right? Because the outcome of this is they rubber stamp everything because they're just wrapped in gauze in the corner. They've been there for 100 years and they don't care.
I hope you put this data on freefloat.llc because I think mummies is the new zombies. Because first of all, everyone's getting a little tired of the zombies in the corporate governance world. Second of all, this mummies data you can only get using free float analytics data,
you need
right?
the influence numbers.
I love this. Numbers. I love mummies. What do you have anything else? Because I don't know how you're going to top mummies.
You know what? I have 3 more. You tell me which you want to hear.
Go ahead.
I'm definitely going to do one.
Keep going.
All right. So vampires. Yeah. Okay. These are directors that perform under 250.
Okay, now you're getting weird.
Batting average. They're
according to our data, freefloatanalytics.com.
According to our data, they bat less than 250 for earnings and TSR, meaning they're in the bottom quartile over their careers.
Meaning, if you're a shareholder and you see these performance numbers, you really would be advised to vote against them because
just on pure performance.
They're not making you any money. They're not making the company any money.
Whatever their strategy is, it's not working. No. You vote against them.
It's not working.
They also have greater than 10 years of tenure.
Wow. So they've sucked for a long time.
And they're over 75 years old.
Oh, my God.
So they're ancient and blood-sucking. That's the vampires.
This might be better than mummies. Okay.
There's only 4 globally.
Thank God.
There's only 4 vampires.
Okay. I was worried you're going to say there were a lot, like hundreds like the mummies.
The amazing part is 2 of the 4 are U.S. vampires. Bill Franke of Frontier Group.
Okay.
In the U.S., he's 86 years old. He has 63% influence on the board.
So this is why they're still there. This is why the vampire. Of course, the vampires have that much influence. Of course,
they're super influential. Yeah, they're like CEOs or founders. They've been there for 1 million years and they get nothing.
And like in real life, good luck killing a vampire. Right? It's almost impossible.
You can't. Yeah. You need some combination of garlic steaks and
it's still not going to work. They need to decide to leave.
You have Sven Olof Johansson, fast partner AB in Sweden. He's 78 years old. He has 87% influence on the board and 28 years of tenure.
Wow.
Madam Po Chu Yu.
Madam.
The only woman. Madam. Yeah. Yes. She's a madam. I think she's actually been
unusual.
Knighted
a woman, an Asian woman to boot with that much power.
Here's what's crazy about her. She's at Lai Sun Development in Hong Kong. She is 99 years old.
Wow, good for her.
She has 53% influence on the board. She has a 40-year tenure on this board. Mm-hmm. She is the mother of the chair and the grandmother of another director on the board.
Is she the founder of the company?
No, she's not the founder. Huh. She's not the founder.
Wow.
So, which is crazy. And then my favorite...
Is this the first time in the history of corporate governance, the history of this show at least, in the history of our company, that we have ever said the word grandmother?
grandmother to a board member.
But this is how patriarchal this world really is. Like I don't think we've ever said the word grandmother in the context of corporate governance.
And she's a vampire. She's like she's a blood-sucking grandmother.
Incredible.
I love that.
Madame Po Chu, you said?
Madame Po Chu Yu.
Okay, got it.
And then and then one of our favorites, a favorite of the show, Stefano Pacina, the
really?
vampire
Are you serious?
himself. I am dead serious.
The man ruining Walgreens.
Walgreens. He's the executive chair at Walgreens. He's 82. He has 63% influence on the board because of his shareholdings. He has a 12-year tenure.
This is somehow not surprising to me. He does,
isn't it not?
We almost described him like a vampire, right? Like getting rid of Roz Brewer and blaming her for all his crummy decisions.
So, look, the point is you can find bloodsuckers all throughout the data if you want. You want to define it differently. All right, I've got two more.
Well, can I just say about Stefano Pacina,
please.
the controlling influence at Walgreens? Isn't it funny that he starts this drug empire, right? And knowing that the one thing they don't sell is a way of getting rid of vampires, right? You cannot kill, right? I mean,
no, they don't.
So he's kind of onto something. He's kind of wise that way, right?
I walked up and down those aisles. There's not a single bottle of holy water.
So he's
anywhere.
the only one who's thriving from that empire these days. All right, what else?
All right, two more sections, and they're shorter. First is Igor's.
Okay, sounds roughly.
Igor?
Yeah, it's kind of Halloween-esque. Okay, it's like
Igor.
Nostradamus? Is that what Igor was?
No, Igor is like the
hunchback.
It's the hunchback who helps out, their master.
A
right?
henchman. A henchman.
So these are directors who are on 4 or more boards in the last 10 years. They're the pay chair at least one of them. Okay. And they pay the CEO in the top quartile of all directors over all those boards.
So they're like a
despite
toady.
being in the bottom quartile of earnings.
All right, say that again. I talked over that.
Okay.
They pay the CEO.
Horrible earnings.
Yeah.
They pay the CEO anyway, and they're on 4 or more companies where they keep doing this. They basically just keep paying the CEO. So
they're toadies. They're doing the CEO's bidding.
They're walking around and saying, whatever you want, master.
Just like I described at the top of the show at Corpay, right? It's like you have a buddy on the compensation committee who's just doing what you need to get done. Yeah. And
there are 2 in our database.
Got it.
Matthew
Igors.
Espy, 2 Igors. Matthew Espy, he's on 2 current boards, Wesco International and Diebold Nixdorf. He bats 133 for earnings, 492 for TSR, and a stellar 0.045 for CEO pay, meaning he is paying the CEOs at the 4+ boards he's been on in the last 10 years, including these 2 that he's currently on, in the top less than 1% of, or less than 5% of all CEOs. These are the most paid CEOs on a CEO pay ratio.
I think you should promote Matthew Espy on your LinkedIn page. That's an incredible accomplishment. That's incredible.
and Tim Haley, who's on 4 boards right now.
4.
Netflix being one of them, 2U, Zuora, and ThreadUp. So you can see a pattern here. He's into like these, VC. He's a VC guy, right? He somehow bats 200 for earnings, 361 for TSR, and 122 for CEO pay.
Look, this is proof. This is proof that, once again, the ESG data is not political, it's not left, it's not right, it's not capitalist, it's not socialist. Look, if you're building a board and you just want, and you're a CEO and you just need someone to kind of help keep your pay high, maybe increase it every year,
go find
get a Tim Haley, right? Just use the data the way you want to use it.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, like there are Igors everywhere. Igor. Find some Igors. And then last but not least, to round out my part of the show, this was my favorite find of 2024, and I called it the Frankenstein. I did as deep a dive as you can do on this. The Frankenstein is a director who was a zombie in 2023. They were voted off the board, but stayed on. Right?
Okay. A Frankenstein is a zombie.
Was a zombie. And then the following year, in 2024, they got greater than 50% of votes from investors. So
is that what Frankenstein is? Is that what Frankenstein is?
I'm thinking of it as like reanimated
A
corpse,
reanimated
right?
zombie.
Like it's
Okay.
basically it was a zombie that was kind of reanimated, right? Like turned
I guess that's what
undead
Frankenstein really is, right? He was like a
I
bunch
don't
of
know.
body parts from dead people, and then they used
and then he was
electricity
alive,
to,
right? Like then
yeah,
he was alive,
okay.
right? Like so I'm
I like
calling
this.
it.
I like this.
So this is someone who's voted out, stayed anyway, and then investors were like, "F it, we'll vote for them," right? Like
Wow, that's quite a year. Think about that. That's quite a year. Yeah.
there was one that I
Only
could find
one.
in
Thank
our data.
God.
Only
Thank God.
one.
Thank God.
Mark Curry, PhD from Ironwood Pharmaceuticals.
Mm-hmm.
He got 55.8% of the vote against in 2023.
Which, again, relatively speaking to the data, that is an extraordinarily high
That's
amount of
super
votes
high.
against. Yeah, extraordinary.
Out of something like, I think we had something, I think I have data on something like 70,000 votes from 2024 for directors. There were maybe 70 that get less than 50,
Right.
like less than 50% for.
This is
so
a
he's
very-
one of a very elite class.
Yeah, and a very, very extremely clear, coherent message from shareholders.
Yeah, get out, right?
Yes, you get
That's
out.
the message.
Yeah.
Stays on, does not hear
Stays
the
on.
message.
Yeah.
He's a zombie for all of 2023 into 2024. And in 2024, in April, this is one other thing I noticed. I know proxy season is hot, but every one of these companies, and I'm not joking, every single one of these companies has the almost exact same AGM dates and proxy dates. All of their proxies are within a 1 week span in the second week of April or third week of April.
Well, yeah.
I mean, that's the height of season.
We've long wondered out loud whether, is part of the strategy of this that you just overwhelm shareholders who have multiple holdings and multiple companies. You overwhelm them with so much information. It's like in one of these movies covering a law case where they overwhelm your opponent with
Disclosures.
and you send
discovery.
over 500 boxes of discovery, so they have to go through every single page. It's the same thing, right? You're overwhelming shareholders.
So Mark Curry gets 55.8% vote against in 2023. He's on the pay committee, but he's just a member. This isn't a controlled company. The directors don't own a lot of the share. It's whatever. It's a very normal company. I cannot find anything that says Mark Curry should get voted out. But in 2024, all the same things apply. He only gets 4% votes against. 96% vote for him in 2024. They vote him out in 2023. He ignores them. They vote him in 2024.
Maybe they're
fine with it at a 96% rate.
Well, two things are going on here. Maybe he's just extremely charming, or maybe they were impressed by his fortitude, by his, he just said no, and they were like, "Wow, that's impressive. That's a strong."
I mean, it is
strong
Ironwood
man.
Pharmaceuticals,
Yeah,
so it does
Ironwood.
sound like a tough company.
That's crazy. It's crazy.
So he is our one and only Frankenstein, reanimated from
Amazing.
dead body parts to
So-
be alive in 2024.
Before we wrap up, and again, I hope you post this somewhere. This data set, freefloat.llc. So Matt has invented some exciting new categories. The governance world has long known about zombies.
Yeah, zombies are a
But
thing,
this
yeah.
week, Matt has krakens, which I'm a little unsure about.
You don't like those.
Krakens, but mummies, vampires, Igors, Frankensteins. Incredible. This is really, this is a Halloween special. That's the Proxy Countdown for the week of October 28th, 2024, Halloween week. Join us next week when we jump back into the alternative democracy pool, forever on the lookout for shareholder sharks, floating bloody band-aids, and wayward directors.
That got grosser.